Today, I'm here with Anjelika, and at the timing of our talk, she was 1 month postpartum with her freeborn baby. She speaks to me about many things, one of which is how important it is for her to pass down ancestral traditions to her children in many different ways. In this very lovely and wholesome conversation, Anjelika speaks to her relationship to hunting and how it's deepening the relationship she and her family have to the earth, to their bodies, and to the animals. Coming into her first pregnancy right at the end of 2019 and knowing that she needed to protect her and her baby from what was beginning to happen in the next year. Choosing to have a medical midwife support her first birth experience, which was largely online and over the phone. Having her trust be betrayed when her medical midwife stripped her membranes at 36 weeks without consent. Feeling herself shift into the beginnings of her birth portal at 38 weeks during her mother blessing, birthing with 11 people present in the home, and it becoming a sort of community event where Anjelika could rewrite the image of birth for the many people witnessing. Processing her birth experience and being encouraged by friends to not downplay the trauma that she did feel from certain points in the journey, experiencing a pregnancy release at 6 weeks. Anjelika speaks to a mystical experience of hunting a deer 1 month before conceiving her daughter, deepening into this new phase of her mothering and letting go of her maiden self for good, feeling the sensations of birth starting at 34 weeks, trusting her body when pieces of her amniotic sac were retained within the womb and released over 1 week later, and enjoying a nourishing postpartum time. I'm so honored I was able to hear Anjelika speak to her powerful birth experience only 1 month after her baby was born. Her words are so pure and so beautifully express this amazing and redemptive birth that she was able to have. Women, have you heard? The Free Birthing in Color movement now has a private community space for all women to join. Within this private community, we have monthly village prenatals to celebrate and support the pregnant women moving towards their birthing time. There are monthly community calls to build deeper connection with one another. We have bi-monthly book clubs to gain deeper wisdom of our female bodies. There are guest speakers that will facilitate talks on all things women's health. We have space for mothers to share their in-power birth stories and so much more. You can join this community space for only $6 per month from now until December 21st of this year. I know that you've been seeking connection, support, guidance, knowledge, and newfound friendships. So now is the time to join us and find exactly what you're looking for. Even if you don't identify as a woman of color or an Indigenous woman, you're welcome to be here because we all need to be witnessed in the passages of life that we move through, no matter who we are or what we look like. This community will hold you whether you're pregnant or not pregnant, trying to conceive, don't want children at all, if you've had losses or abortions, if you're a birth or death worker of any kind, a grandmother, an auntie, or wise woman, there's space for you to be seen and share your wisdom to the collective well. Go to primalwomenportal.com/FBC community or check the show notes to become a member today. Hello, Anjelika. Welcome to the Free Birthing in Color movement. I am so very excited to have you here to speak about your most recent birth experience that was exactly 1 month ago today as we're recording.
Yay, I'm so excited to be on here and to share and to just be like so freshly in this postpartum bubble and like,
Mhm.
yeah, just be deep within the integrations and the initiations of being a mom of two and yeah, welcoming in this whole new spectrum of a journey that is motherhood
Mhm.
expanded.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, amazing. So, yeah, as I was saying before, I'm very excited to hear this story. So, the first question I would love to ask you, though, is what is your ancestry and lineage that you're passing on to your children?
Yeah, so on my mother's side, she is Norwegian and French, and then she was partnered with a full or half African American, half Oglala Lakota Sioux. So that's my biological father's side.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so my merging of bloodlines
Mm-hmm.
has just been a very prominent part of my life and
Mm-hmm.
in the ways that I operate and choose to live and,
Mm-hmm.
sharing these ancestral codes that are within my DNA. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually looking at your Instagram page this afternoon, and there's a highlight of hunting that you have, and there's pictures of you and your partner and your son all like doing this together. And I was reading the notes that you're saying, you want your son to be connected back to nature and have this reverence for the animals that are giving their life so that you can feed your family. And I thought that was so beautiful to see, yes, you're hunting, yes, you're taking the life of an animal, but you're using it in a way to nourish your bodies, to nourish yourself. And yeah, it was just really beautiful to see you and your partner do this and also show this as an example to your child that, this is the way that life works. This is how we can work in harmony with life and with the animals that are here and with, together as a family to bring sustenance and abundance in for ourselves and still hold reverence to these beings for giving us, giving their life so that we can continue ours. And yeah, all of that. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a very prominent part of our journey as a couple together.
Hmm.
My partner's been hunting for over 20 years, and we've been together for 9 years this year. And
Hmm.
so it's always been intertwined in our relationship and how we choose to live and operate. But like, as we, felt our first child coming forward, like there was just this like really prominent just pull forward to like continue living in these ancestral ways and like
Hmm.
deepen relation with the earth, with the animals, with our bodies, with,
Hmm.
just what nature and God have provided. Like, yeah, just again, having this deep reverence for living in harmony with the earth and honoring
Hmm.
these animals. And we can many people will like eat meat from the store and never know like where their food has come from and never had deep relation with what food they're eating. And for us it's like really important to instill this sense of just awareness and
Hmm.
appreciation for where the life has come from, the process of
Hmm.
taking the life, honoring the animal by utilizing multiple parts, almost every part of the animal, and or giving back what we're not going to use to the earth. Yeah, and then instilling ceremony within that. So that's
Hmm.
been a really deep part of mine and my partner's relationship, whereas he's very in the physical of the hunting, and I bring forward this like very spiritual aspect to hunting.
Hmm.
And so it's like beautiful that we can like merge that for our children to like have this like full awareness of yeah what's being consumed, and
Hmm.
the ways in which we choose to live, and whether they choose to take that in their life or not. It's just a really beautiful value system to place so early on in life, and to show them these life skills where they don't have to like rely on a system that is isn't there to like bring health forward,
Hmm.
right? It's like we
Hmm.
want them to know that they can be self-sufficient and they can
Hmm.
find sustenance through the resources of the land, but only when it's in right relation, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a really big factor that we want to instill forward and
Hmm.
communicate clearly, and especially just for ourselves too. Like it's
Hmm.
really huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love everything that you said because it's so true. And that's how we are meant to be walking this earth, being in right relation with the plants, with the animals, and with each other. And so it's so wonderful to hear that that is the value system that you are giving to your children because that's such a gift. Like it's honestly one of the biggest gifts you could give to children is them having that knowledge. It doesn't matter how much money they could be making or like getting this high paying fancy job. It's like these life skills are so important. So, yeah, I just want to acknowledge that. I'm so grateful that that is how you are bringing your children up in this world because we need more parents to have that understanding and awareness of that. So, yeah, that's really awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. So, speaking of your son, I would love to now ask you this question. Where is it that your motherhood journey has begun?
Yeah. So, um, It was 2019 when we conceived our son, and I had been on like a full, just like maiden voyage, like really deep in my like just accessing my feminine wisdom and like really
Mm,
coming deep into like who I am as a woman, feeling very like feminine and sexy and like, oh my gosh, I have this like, magnetic power and I could do anything in the world. And
mm,
like these conversations started coming forward of like, like children, and our friends would bring up conversations about, do you guys want children? And like, so these kind of conversations just started like swirling around us. And at the time we didn't think anything of it. We're like,
mhm,
oh, okay, like interesting. Like someday we'll have kids, but not yet.
mhm,
Um, and so, yeah, it's really interesting how, I'm on this like deep individual path. My partner and I are very like individual within our lifestyles and our passions. But like we come together in our values and ways of living. And I had gone on like a 3 week trip to Maui and, was like questioning every facet of my life. Like, am I going to stay here? Am I going to travel the world? Am I going to do all this? But I decided to come home.
mm,
And within 2 weeks, it was the Thanksgiving Day,
mm,
um, which is it's a really significant like holiday and in my world of like the emotions that arise for me
mm,
every
mhm,
single year. It just really surfaces all of these deep pain and just like questioning, the entire way of the societal conditioning and just like the lack of acknowledgement for our indigenous peoples across the Americas. And like, it
mhm,
just always brings up these big feels. And so of course I end up conceiving on this day that like holds such like a crazy powerful jolt of energy within
mhm,
my being.
mhm,
And yeah, so that was like the beginning of you know feeling this like conception energy coming
mhm,
into my life. But I would say that I've always had these tendencies of like just kind of helping mother. Like I was always helping nanny children. I was
mhm,
watching my cousins and my brother from like age 8, 9, just like always being kind of mama's helper. And
mhm,
I really just had a passion in my life to like to hear stories of others. I would always attract friends who kind of had like different woundings or traumas in their lives and like would be like the listener. And so I
yeah,
always felt this like nurturing aspect within myself.
mhm,
Um, and so I would say like this glimpse of who I could be as a mother started as a very young age, and I always knew I wanted to be a mother. So
okay,
when our conception came forward, it was a very accepting
mm,
experience. It
mhm,
was kind of no surprise. It wasn't like, oh no, what are we going to do? It was very much like, wow, like
mhm,
now it's time. Like
mhm,
everything that we've done prior is like initiated us to this next experience as a couple together. And yeah, so that was really, really powerful time in my life, especially as, everything in the world became chaotic in the end of 2019. And like,
yeah,
it was a big journey of like me just putting up like a protective barrier around myself and
mhm,
being like, I'm not going to listen to any of it. Like, I'm going to honor who I am and what this baby is speaking forward through me,
yeah,
and begin this conscious relationship with talking to the seed that chose me to be its mother.
wow, yeah. So, what then was it like navigating this pregnancy? Because it was your first pregnancy, and then, as you said, it was late 2019, coming into 2020, when all of this, crazy nonsense started to happen. And you're saying you wanted to protect your bubble. So, what did that look like for you? Was that kind of, you know, yeah, just how did that look for you?
Yeah, so I did choose to have a midwife.
Mhm,
And so we did go to a local midwifery center that had two practicing midwives. And it felt very like intimate and like that I could actually like build relation with them, and which was really important to me. I felt this call to intimacy. And so,
Mm,
in the sense of like creating this protective bubble, I knew that I could only have people in my sphere that I could like trust and
mm-hmm.
that wouldn't like judge me for my choices or put their opinions over me or instill their fear onto
Right,
me
right, right.
ultimately. And so, through my months of going, it was actually really interesting because I had gone to like one in-person appointment in the beginning of my pregnancy, and then everything became like telemedicine online just through a Zoom
Uh,
call.
okay, yeah.
So it was actually kind of a blessing in disguise
Mm-hmm.
because it became a very hands-off midwifery experience. I went through the I went through like 7 months of my pregnancy without even like having to go in person, except
Mm-hmm.
for like once in a blue moon to like when they wanted to check, um, heart rate and blood or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, yeah, instilling the sense of protection. Like, first off, I just really felt this like warrior essence coming through my body. Like, and
Okay.
I've always like felt that, but it was like so prominent. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was channeling all of these like just direct coded poems about like breaking through the system and
Mm-hmm.
dismantling like
Mm-hmm.
all the conditioning and repatterning our consciousness and like just really
Yeah.
receiving so much through my being. And so
Mm-hmm.
even when it came to like conversations with my family and such, my mom's side is very accepting of my choices. They're very like kind of in touch with their like hippie side of
Mm-hmm.
things, have experienced birth and seen natural birth and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then my partner's side, they had their own opinions and their own fears. And
Right.
so it was very much of like, you can have your fears, but like, don't put them onto me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to hear that. Like,
Right.
thank you for your concern, but it's not really warranted here. Yeah. And so it was a very big journey of like just kind of pushing everyone out while
Mm-hmm.
also just like welcoming in those people who I did feel accepted my choices and whatnot.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just ask quickly, the decision to choose to work with medical midwives, was this because of the fact that all of the 2020 nonsense was happening and you didn't want to go to the hospital? Or did you always just kind of know that like whenever I get pregnant, I would like to have the support of midwives over the hospital situation?
Yeah. I did always know that.
Okay.
I always knew that I wanted to have a home birth.
Hmm.
I had this like deep sense of fear of going to the hospital.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was kind of yeah, just like my body talking to me anytime I would think about it. Like, it was just like,
Mm.
that's a full no. That's
Mm.
just no, no, no.
Yeah.
And yeah, my grandmother, she used midwives and had a home birth with my mom. My
Okay.
mom had unmedicated hospital births with
Hmm.
all three of her children.
Hmm.
So I had this sense of like encoded wisdom that like
Mm.
my body was capable.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and I hadn't really like heard about free birth until I was like halfway through my pregnancy. Um, and it was a conversation that I had with my partner multiple times, but he kind of had this sense of fear within himself that like
Mm.
there wasn't like this like full confidence within
Okay.
him, and it made me waver against my own intuition to even choose to free birth.
Okay.
And
Mm.
so for his comfort and his like confidence to be there, I
Yep.
continued moving forward with the midwifery care, um, which, it was beautiful in its aspects. I had one of the midwives there, she'd been practicing for like over 40 years, and she just really was like mother led. She wasn't
Mm.
like enforcing things or, she allowed me to make decisions for myself.
Hmm.
Um, and so I felt like there was this, this beautiful cultivation of a relationship that we had created where it was like, okay, like I can have
Hmm.
a home birth and it's not going to be sabotaged. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
oh,
Hmm.
that was really important to me as well.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really nice. And so what was it like? Because you were saying that it was more kind of online prenatal visit, so you didn't actually go into the center to see them that much, but leading up to like say the last couple weeks of pregnancy and leading up to your birth experience, what was that general tone like working with these midwives?
Yeah. So um around like 33 weeks, 34 weeks, they were having they start doing the kind of like once a week check-ins.
Mm.
And so that's when they kind of invited me to like come into the center. And yeah, it was pretty like straightforward of like, you know, between 34 and 36 weeks. So I had two appointments. And it was just like, you know, they check the heart rate and, you know, just checking in with like my mental health and how I was doing and kind of giving me different resources to prepare for birth, getting all my, the ordering the birth equipment and getting,
Hmm.
you know, everything that I needed. And then at 36 weeks, I began to lose my mucus plug. And I
Okay.
had a midwife appointment the day after I lost my mucus plug.
Mm.
And um, it's really interesting. This is where it starts to turn, which is
Okay.
interesting.
Mm.
Um, she had asked if I wanted her to check my cervix, and I said, okay, like I'm kind of curious. Like I've, you know, I've been having like, you know, little sensations, but like I did lose a pretty good chunk of my plug. I'd obviously never seen that before.
Hmm.
Was genuinely curious about where I was at, and yeah, it just became a, um, or at that time. So she checked my cervix, and she was like, okay, you're about 3 to 4 centimeters. And then as she was doing that, she was like, I stripped your membrane. And I was like,
No.
oh, okay. Like I didn't really even know what that meant. I was like, I,
Right.
you know, never experienced this. And and she was like, so like labor could still be, you know, weeks away or it could happen in days. And I'm like, okay, like, all right. And just kind of, you know, I left the appointment
Mm.
feeling really weird. Um,
Yeah. And like, why would you do that? That
yeah,
that's
like,
crazy to me, especially for a mother that's 36 weeks. If anything, you want her to still be pregnant 4 weeks later. You don't just put your fingers in someone's vagina and then do something to their body without even asking them. Like that's crazy. But stripping your membranes at 36 weeks is like, oh
mhm,
gosh.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, I know. Looking back, I'm like, oh, no, 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 no,
Mm.
no. Yeah, and so the next week, I kind of continued losing my mucus plug, little bits, and then like slight contractions throughout the week. And
Mm.
then at 38 weeks on the day, I went into labor.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was a bit of a interesting thing. And I'll always wonder, like, would my body have carried my baby longer?
Hmm.
Would, you know, what would my experience have been like had I not allowed anyone's fingers inside of me?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so then that was definitely like a pivotal experience to where I was like, okay, like I
Hmm.
don't want cervical checks anymore. Like that
Yeah.
was the one I had, and I was done with
Yeah.
that.
And
And
the
that kind of
sad,
broke that
oh,
trust, you know.
yeah, I was just gonna say the sad thing is you were going into that experience seeing that your mucus plug had started to leave. You were curious. She asked, "Oh, I can just quickly check you and see what's going on," having the full thought of, "Okay, she's just gonna check me, give me some information because this is the first time I'm going through this." And then something else happens. Like, yeah, it's a total betrayal of trust because you were just wanting one thing and then she did something else completely unconsented. Like that's horrible. That's really awful, especially for a first time mother who is, having that feeling of like, oh, cool, something is happening, but like not wanting to force something to happen. Um, yeah, like that betrayal of trust, I can totally see how you'd feel that way. I'd feel that way if somebody did that to me, if I was just asking, that simple question of like, yeah, let's see where I'm at because my mucus plug is going down.
Mhm.
Oh, it just, yeah, it's things like that that
I mean,
seem so like quote unquote small things that happen within a woman's pregnancy, but they lead to much bigger things. And then, yeah, you just wonder why all of this, everything gets just blown out of proportion in birth processes because, medical midwives just do this. Let me just do this thing. And then, yeah, ugh, it just
I know,
frustrates
I
me so
know.
much that that's that's what happened to you. Yeah.
Well, and like it really made me think about, years later after processing and going through my own journey of like, okay, well, was this, based on maybe her own fear that came forward of like, I want she wanted me to have my dream home birth and like
Mm,
didn't want me to go past the 42 weeks and like so maybe her own fear kind of started to come in there. Um
mm,
play out in this certain way where like she just kind of took it upon herself to like make this choice.
yeah.
And of course I'll never know. And like but yeah, it really makes me think about all the women who, have these non-consensual checks and experiences that happen to them. And like, we try to like dim it down and to be like, oh, it wasn't really traumatic, but like, like
Mm-hmm.
it happened. And it's like, okay, but like it
Yeah.
is still like a traumatic experience. It is still
Yeah.
something that, someone, non-consensually did something to your body and
Yeah.
your baby. And like, you didn't ask for that. And it's not
Yeah.
okay. And,
Yeah.
need to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so normalized. Like, oh, it's fine. My doctor did it to me too. And it's like, yeah,
Right.
and that's not okay.
Right.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh. Wow. Anyway, sorry. So
I
you're
know.
30, you're just like when I hear those things, I hear it so
I
often,
know.
it just like frustrates me
Yeah.
so much. And it's just women need to know this is not okay. It's
Mhm.
not normal. It is normal lives, but things like that happening to your bodies while you're pregnant, while you're in birth, it is not okay and should never be tolerated.
Right. And then
Yeah.
it goes to show that, people aren't just having these experiences in the hospital. It could be something as intimate as a
Mm-hmm.
two-person midwifery care where you built a
Yeah.
relationship with somebody one-on-one directly, but they like still are,
Yeah.
going and moving out of this code of conduct that they're having to follow.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so yeah, it's beyond me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But yes, please continue. So you're at 38 weeks, you said, and that's when your birth
Yeah.
process really started
Yeah.
to move.
So the day I turned 38 weeks, I was having my blessing way ceremony that day.
Mm,
Um, and I'm a total Taurus. Like I was like throwing my own blessing way. I was like, I
mm,
want things to be as detailed and beautiful as I want them to be. And
mm-hmm.
kind of had this like layout of my maidens still coming forward.
Okay.
And like wanting to like do things for myself, very independent, very
Mm-hmm.
like, curating things to like fit what I desired. Which was beautiful in its own aspect. And so I curated this like whole day and had a bunch of sisters and my partner's mom, my grandmother come out to
Mm,
celebrate.
mm,
And that morning, I, kind of had finished setting up some things, and my mom was there and my grandmother was there. And I was like, kind of, kind of feeling different today. Like
mm.
maybe this could be the day. Like it just was like I would sit down and just be like kind of zoning out a bit and
Okay.
just kind of began feeling myself come into this like this void and just this
Mm,
really in between space that I had yet to like really experience.
mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so we had, beautiful ceremony throughout the day and like was like blessed and loved up on by my sisters. And I remember it was about 3 p.m. and my contractions started to come on. And, I think they were like maybe every like 15 minutes or so. Um, and I remember we were all standing in a circle and each of the women like put their hands on my belly one at a time and like looked into my eyes and like just
Mm,
spoke words of love over me and like prayed over me and
mm,
just held this like beautiful space. And I remember as we're all standing there holding hands, like I looked out to the mountains that were surrounding us and like I was like, whoa, like things are getting really psychedelic right now. And I just like started like feeling these like waves and like just like seeing like the mountains and the trees just like swaying and dancing and like myself like just kind of going deep internal into myself and like becoming
mm,
really quiet and
mm,
like no need to speak. It was very much just like I'm receiving and I'm going in and I could feel it.
Mm. Wow.
And so there was no like, there was no initial like fear or panic that I was like beginning my journey of labor. It was just like, I felt like I immediately had to go into like a meditative, like trance state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which now looking back, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have like tried to keep doing stuff and like whatnot, because you never know how long labor is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like immediately I was like, all right, like I'm just gonna go in. And my partner had been out bear hunting with a friend that day. And so like somebody tried to call him, he hadn't answered. And then finally, like later, like right before sunset, he answered and came home. And um, all the women, like I had nothing prepared. Mind you, I'm 38 weeks. I thought I had weeks longer. Everyone's saying, you know, your first birth, you're gonna go till, you know, whenever.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these women that were there, they like, one would get me food, one would sit with me, one was rubbing my feet. A couple of them were setting up the birth tub and a canopy with a mosquito net so I could have my pool outside. Then we're preparing my bed and cleaning the bathroom. And so it was just like a perfect culmination of like all of these women like just coming together to like support me so I could actually like go into my birth portal.
Mm, wow.
And that was just so beautiful and powerful and something that like I'll always remember.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and so it was sunset. It was August that I was having him. It was August 2nd, the night of August 2nd. I started to like really go into labor. Um, around, you know, sunset happened around 9 p.m. Everyone left. It was just my mom, my grandmother, and my partner there with me. Um, and so I had been, you know, at the beginning of labor for about like 6 hours at this point when we decided to call the midwife. And she was like, okay, just like keep me updated with where you're at and, you know, how far apart are contractions. And they were a little like sporadic. Some would be close together, some would be far apart.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't like gaining in like intensity. But again, I was like in such a meditative state that like I was just like had no concept of time. I had no concept of like, you know, how close together, how far apart, but nothing was like so intense that I like couldn't handle it. So there was no rush for them to come.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm really thankful that I like took that space. Um, and then around like 10 p.m., midnight, I had gone out into the birth pool and the full moon started rising over the mountains.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was just like this beautiful ambiance of glow into the birth
Mm.
pool. And my grandmother, she was sitting at the table with like a little like a lantern beside her, and she's like sewing up this blanket for my baby. And like
Oh.
just my mom would come and sit out next to me and like rubbing my back and my hips and just talking to me. And
Mm.
um, my partner, he was there for a little bit and then he kind of went inside to go and rest. And um, yeah, and so I stayed in that pool for a couple hours. And then I would say it was like 1 a.m., about maybe 2 a.m. I'm still unsure of what time they showed up. So it was a midwife and then like the birth assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they came in like the middle of the night and things were like picking up in intensity. And I had gotten out of the pool because it got quite cold in the air.
Mm.
Um, and everyone just kind of like took some time to rest. It was still, I hadn't like hit transition yet. I was still just like really deep in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I had began like I definitely was like in like a I was becoming very vocal and just like as the waves were becoming more intense, I was like, oh, like,
Mm.
okay, like I'm really fucking in it right now.
Yeah.
And you know, I'd like be on my bed and like kind of shifting around, but I'd like look over my partner sleeping next to me and I was like, what is he doing? Like, this isn't what, this is not fair. Like, dude. um And so that was like like a funny like dynamic. Like in the moment, I was like super pissed off that he was sleeping.
Mm.
And I'd like shake him up, and be like, "Hey, don't you see I'm in it?" And he's like, "Uh-huh," like snores off. And I'm just like, "Oh, okay." But like my mother was like, she was like my doula. She was like my person by my side.
Mm.
Um, and that was really really powerful because like I have a great relationship with her. She's
Mm.
very grounding for me. And then about so I would say around 4 or 5 a.m., things really started to pick up. I had been throwing up for like an hour to almost 2 hours straight. I couldn't keep any liquids down. I hadn't eaten, like I
Mm.
literally barely ate during the blessing way. So I was going on like, friggin' 15 or more than that because I barely ate through the day, like 24
Mm.
hours of not eating.
Mm.
Um, but I was just like throwing up all the liquid that I was drinking.
Yeah.
And the midwife offered to do an IV because I was literally getting to a point where I was just like I was so drowsy and like I just like had no energy. Um, and then I've been since 3 p.m. that I was like feeling the sensations, and
Mm.
so I did take the offer of the IV, and after that, it like definitely like gave me some energy. It definitely helped.
Mm-hmm.
And then around 6 a.m., I had decided to get in the shower. And this was where I like felt like, so with the throwing up, and then I got in the shower, I was like, okay, like this must be kind of what transition is. I was like in the
Mm.
shower and I was like completely vocal. I was like, my eyes were rolling in the back of my head. It was super intense. The surges were just like coming on intensely. My partner was up and beside me and like kind of being like a sturdy arm thing I could hold on to and just kind of sway back and forth on. My mom's like rubbing my hips, and the
Mm.
midwife and assistant are like kind of keeping their distance. They're just like getting their things prepared. Um, and then I remember being in the shower, and all of a sudden I just like got this like uncontrollable urge to push, and my legs just started like shaking. Um, and so then this was kind of like, yeah, between 6 and 7 abouts. And I remember asking to go outside. Like I was
Mm.
like, I want to go outside. And like that was like the most grounding place for me.
Mm.
So I had like walked outside and was like out there for a little bit. And then, or maybe I went outside before I went in the shower. Yeah, I think I went outside
Okay.
before I went in the shower. And then I came back in, got
Mm.
in the shower, and then afterwards went back into bed after I felt kind of this jolt of energy within me.
Mm.
And then I had asked to go back outside again, and the midwife was like, "It's too cold out there. You can't go out there."
Okay.
And I was like, just like deep in it. Like I just was like, okay.
Mm.
Um, and looking back, I wish someone had like advocated for me in that and just been like, no, she's going outside. That's what she
Yeah.
wants to do. I think
Yeah.
she thought I wanted to get in the birth pool, which would have taken too much time to like fill up or whatnot. But I literally just like wanted to be on the earth. I wanted to have my baby on the earth.
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
and so when I like felt her say that, like my body kind of started to close and like contract, and like it became like
Mm.
more intense.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, um, so there ended up being 11 people at my birth at home.
Wow.
So that was a key detail I forgot.
Okay.
So there was the midwife, the
Yeah.
birth assistant,
Yeah.
my mom, my grandmother, my partner, his mom, and then I had two friends who drove over from Spokane, which is like on the other side of Washington. And then all of a sudden, my partner's sister showed up, and then my little sister. But then within the end of that, so that's 10. But
Yeah.
then my when my dad brought my little sister there,
Mm-hmm.
she was 10 at the time. Um, I didn't know he was also bringing my brother and grandpa with him.
Oh.
And so they were like they were outside, but like they were still present.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like, it became a community event. It became a family ordeal. Um,
Wow.
and so when I
Yeah.
like look back at that, I'm like, those were definitely like moments that like kind of stalled my labor a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just having like kind of everyone's eyes on me, waiting for something to happen. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, coming into transition, like feeling ready to push out my baby, but like everyone's like watching me,
Yeah,
which is like
okay.
what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I honestly like I used it as like fuel to my fire. Like
Okay.
having everyone there, it was almost like I was like showing them or like proving to them that like I could do it.
Right. Okay.
Which, you should never have to do. Like you don't have to prove anything in birth. But like for me, like it like brought forward this like sense of strength within myself where it was like, you can't just like cop out of this. Like you're deep
Yeah.
within this. You're going to birth your baby at home. No
Yeah.
one can save you from this. And you're about to rewrite the story of birth for so many people in this room right now.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was a really powerful thing that I was like telling myself
Yeah.
and like feeling deeply rooted in. And I'm like calling upon my ancestors to guide me. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
calling more people into the room and like, and the earth
Yeah.
and creator and just like feeling this like deep pull to like feel this just like encompass circle around me.
Yeah.
And I remember getting on the birth stool and, like starting to push. And I was just like, oh, this is like super uncomfortable. And I remember the midwife suggesting that I like go on the bed and lay on my back. And I was like, that was like my number one thing. I was like, I will
Mm.
not be birthing on my back. And so when she
Mm-hmm.
suggested that, I was like, no, I am not birthing on my back. Um, and then I ended up getting on all fours and on my bed and my partner by my side, my mom by my side. And I just like went with those like the fetal ejection reflex. I just like started feeling it pulsate through me. And like there was, it being my first time, it was like kind of learning where to like channel the energy to how to push,
Mm-hmm.
but also recognizing that my body was doing it for me.
Mm-hmm.
There was no need to like force anything or do anything. It was just like, this is happening. And
Mm-hmm.
I can, either stand in the way of it or I can like allow it to move through me. And so I just like kept surrendering and like feeling this like force. And um, yeah, at 8:44 a.m., my son emerged into the world.
Mm.
There was a pretty like sad moment of like midwifery sabotage at this point. I
Okay.
had wanted my partner to catch my son,
Yeah.
and the midwife kind of just like put her hands in there and like,
Oh
didn't give
no.
him this opportunity to. Um,
Oh.
and so that was like, this really like, I was like, why didn't you catch him? He was
Yeah.
like, she just kind of like she came in there like she had that, and
Yeah.
it didn't give him like a sense of like power that he could like come in and like catch his
Yeah.
baby.
Oh,
It was
that's so
like he was
sad.
a yeah, it was like he was a bystander of it. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, um, so yeah, he was born, and yeah, we did delayed cord clamping, kept him attached to his placenta for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everyone kind of just they were like flocked around a bit, but after like baby was born, which was such a powerful energy in the room, actually having so much family there and like them
Mm-hmm.
witnessing the birth. It was just like you could just feel this like just emitting power in the room because of the profoundness of birth and
Yeah.
experiencing new life on earth. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that was really beautiful. And I realize now that my son, even throughout the entire pregnancy, he brought forward this sense of like community and building relations and like
Okay.
healing within the relationships of our families and the dynamics that we have. And so it like
Mm-hmm.
only makes sense that there were so many people of family at his
Mm-hmm.
birth. And I am grateful for that experience because it showed me all the things I didn't want
Right. Yeah.
again.
True. Very true.
And so it
Yeah.
was like, I had my beautiful home birth and experience. And like for a while there, I kind of denoted that, I was like, well, nothing like traumatic happened. I was like, it was a great experience. But then as I started processing my story and talking with other women, they were like, your experience is valid. Like, you don't have to like,
Mm-hmm.
push down the fact that like you had things happen that you didn't want to happen or that weren't consensual. Like that is still like violating your
Yeah.
trust, your body, your baby. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have to like suppress that anymore.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely. Can I just
yeah,
ask quickly, how was the birth of your placenta? What was
yeah,
that
it was
experience like?
a really, really quick experience. I think
Yeah.
it was within the next like 20 minutes or so.
Okay. Hmm.
I just was like sitting around on the bed, nursing. He latched pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Um, and then he like kind of slightly latched, then like slept, but then like, got those afterbirth contractions, and then
Hmm.
it just slid right out.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah. And so there wasn't really any like force or pulling or anything. It was like it
Okay.
just came out on its own,
Right. Okay.
which was beautiful. Yeah. But then, yeah, another like kind of sad experience that happened was I had wanted to do a lotus birth
Mm.
of my placenta. And because I had gone into labor much earlier than anticipated, I didn't have like any of my herbs or salts or anything prepared. Um, I thought I had to have kind of a special curation of everything.
Hmm.
But I remember like the midwife kind of opening the placenta and showing me things, and there was a bunch of meconium within it. But after we were done looking at it, and after we had clamped and cut the cord, um, she had put it in a bag with all the meconium in it and put it in the fridge. And I had
Okay.
completely, forgot about it. I'm like in my birth portal. No one else is going to
Yeah.
be thinking about that, but
Yeah.
and so it wasn't until a few days later that I recalled that my placenta was in the fridge and
Okay.
that I had wanted to do like something sacred with it. And
Hmm.
yeah, had this whole so there was a couple pinpointed moments in
Yeah.
in my birth experience that I was like,
Hmm.
not again. Like I need
Yeah.
redemption on all of these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you had people in your life that could say to you, like, don't downplay how you're feeling about the experiences that you had in your birth, even if they are small and they're not, super big traumatic things that had happened. It's still something like you said that was a violation of what you had previously wanted, and a line was crossed, a boundary was crossed, and yeah, it's still valid. So I'm happy that you had someone to reflect that back to you and say like, no, no, you some parts of your birth, your power was taken, even from your partner having the midwife catch the baby and just I see that so often in birth videos where it's like everything is perfect, the mom is in her position, the dad is getting ready, you can like see the energy from him, he's like baby's coming, and then all of a sudden these gloved hands just come in and like touch the baby and then give it to the dad to give to the mom, and it's like you really didn't need to come into that situation at all. He knows how to catch a child, like he's not just going to let this baby fall on the floor. What are you doing? Um,
Right.
so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's those are valid experiences to have feel sad and have heartbreak over, and also say that you want to like redeem these in another birth. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, I was really thankful. Like, but pretty much immediately after his birth, I was like, next time I'm doing that so much differently. And then
Mhm.
it was a couple weeks later that my one of my longtime sisters, she was like, "Do you follow so and so?" It was a local sister who was holding village prenatals and
Mm.
supporting women in free birth, and there was a couple birth keepers locally, and so I like kind of began this journey of like connecting with the free birth community around me and
Yeah.
making relationships with these other mothers and hearing their stories and witnessing their children, and
Mm.
um yeah, and like after my birth I became very passionate about like beginning my own like doula birth keeper journey. Like um yeah, I just like immediately like went down that route. It's like I want to support women in birth. I
Yeah.
want to be there and make sure these things don't happen. I want to help women advocate. I want fathers to feel empowered to like be
Mhm.
there for other women and trust in themselves. And so I assisted a few sisters,
Mm.
just with support during their home births and the center birth. And yeah, that became a really profound part of my experience of healing
Yeah.
afterwards, and just kind of, yeah, igniting this, continuing to like cultivate this deep sense of knowing that like I would free
Yeah.
birth my baby. Yeah, the
Yeah.
next time.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I that's beautiful, and I love how you're saying how your son was really a big piece in, like, bringing the community together and hearing how you had all of these people at your birth, but it was, loving, trusting family there. And, having that many people, 11 people around could have been a lot more chaotic and could have brought in a lot more fear and, all of these opinions being passed around. But it sounds like everyone, like you said, you have a close relationship with your mom, your grandma was there and had home births with her own children. Um, and yeah, it was like to be able to witness you do this really beautiful thing for your younger siblings and things like that is just really beautiful that that was yeah, what your son brought into the sphere of your life and for the sphere of everyone else that was around you. That yeah, that's like a really beautiful gift that was able to be brought in by this one child that came through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, to just not like, as much as I was like rewiring and rewriting so much alongside,
Mhm.
the spirit that was in my body, like it was,
Mhm.
I also realized after the birth that I didn't have to do it all at
Yeah.
that one, that there
Yeah.
would be a continuing evolution of, the journey that I have as a mother and the choices that I make for my children. And just hearing these subtle calls of
Mm.
what it is to live in, right relation with our genetic makeup and who we
Mhm.
are as women and our innate ability. And yeah, just kind of having this like journey of restructuring the DNA to remember these
Yeah.
truths that live within. Yeah. And yeah, again, it didn't all just like with generational ancestral trauma and healing and karma, like it just didn't have to all be done at
Yeah.
one time. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful that you had the community of women that you could support birthing free of the system, that could support you in education and, knowledge and just visibly seeing these women and mothers, birthing their babies in these ways. And yeah, having it be that thread that also carried you through to this next pregnancy that you are gonna share on. I love that. It's just like, "Oh, yes, that's exactly like, that's it. That's exactly
Yeah.
what women are meant to be doing is, yeah, sharing their story medicine and their lived experience and sharing it with friends and, yeah, just letting it flourish in that way."
Yeah.
Mhm. So then, how many years or I guess you said 2019 was your first, so then
So
your
yeah, I had him
second,
August of 2020.
August 2020.
And then yeah, just kind of went through the motions of motherhood.
Mhm.
You know, I again my maiden continued to show up throughout that first postpartum journey.
Mm.
It was interesting because I did have some family that ended up staying at the house and were there for the few days. And I just like felt myself like have this like urge to like tend to them or like want to like do
Mhm.
stuff around the house. And like I'm like 2 days fresh postpartum and I'm like up on
Yeah.
my feet doing stuff. And like I had this really hard time of like slowing down and like just resting and just I was present with my baby but I was just like trying to like still be in the flow of life.
Mhm.
And, obviously had this like big experience in this, transpiring,
Mm.
birth experience and, replaying every instant in my head.
Yeah.
And so it was almost like I was having a hard time connecting like my body to like
Okay.
what
Mhm.
my spirit was asking of me.
Ah, yeah, 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 okay.
And so, I had kind of lightly heard about like first 40 days. But I definitely like wasn't
Mm.
acknowledging that that's what I needed. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until um, I had actually like on that second day postpartum, I had decided to smoke cannabis and like completely just kind of spiraled in myself and was like,
Mm.
whoa, like that was
Mhm.
too much. Like
Yeah.
it's like you can't just go back to like doing what you were doing before.
Yeah.
It's time to like integrate and to be present and whatnot. And so I think that that first postpartum journey definitely like affected um, kind of my relationship with my own body. And I
Okay.
was almost like feeling a little like disassociated, a little more stressed. And I think that was affecting my milk supply.
Mm.
Um, and that definitely like took an impact on my baby who wasn't able to like fully receive my nourishment. So by like 3 weeks postpartum, um, I had the midwives who were like weighing him and whatnot, saying like, oh, your baby's surviving, not thriving. Like your baby's barely gaining
Oh,
weight and
okay.
like all this stuff. And so like I had these voices in my ear, like telling me
Mm.
things about my baby and my body. And it's just like, I'm having this like spiral effect.
Yeah.
Which was a really significant part of, you know, my story because it
Mm.
brought me to a place where like I needed to like slow down and I needed to be able to receive. I had
Mm-hmm.
been like such a giver in my life and like um, had so many instances where I was like the one giving to people and doing things for people and like and that was what I loved to do, but I
Right.
had yet to like really learn the gift of receiving.
Okay.
um and then so 4 years in the making. We knew as partners that we wanted to wait to have another baby. It was around after my son was about 2 years old. I had been like combo feeding between like formula and breastfeeding, and I fed him for about 2 years. And like, wanted some significant time after being done breastfeeding until we conceived another baby. And I really wanted him to have the space to develop and to grow. Like that was really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And especially within myself too. Like I needed to like replenish nourishment and
Yeah.
minerals and yeah, just really focus on my health and my being and um, just I'd always been somebody who was like a substantial provider in my family and like always had a job and all this stuff. And so fast forward like into when my son was like about to turn 3, my partner and I had actually conceived, and then the spirit chose to release at 6 weeks. We had a
Okay.
mutual communication and felt that it was not time for that spirit to come through.
Right. Okay.
And it was a very feminine spirit that came through,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that she would be back.
Okay.
Uh, and so my son, my it's so beautiful because this, the journey into her conception was
Mm.
like just absolutely profound. Like there was just
Oh,
so
sorry. Can I
yeah,
just
go ahead.
interrupt you quickly and go back to this pregnancy that released at 6 weeks? Um, how did you handle this? Was it just like, did you just have this at home, or did you seek
Mhm.
the assistance of any medical providers, or did you just trust your body in releasing it? And that was kind of how you did it.
Yeah. I just trusted my body. I honestly, so my cycle was like a couple weeks late, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I was like starting to tell my family, I was like, I think I might be pregnant. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel just like I feel something here in my
Yeah.
sphere. I had a really good friend who reached out and was like, she's like, I feel a girl in your sphere right now. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when I like really dropped in with this baby and like we chose to mutually release, I knew
Mm-hmm.
that that was kind of the beginning of like trusting in my body to
Okay.
sovereignly birth my babies.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I just like allowed it to pass. I started feeling some cramping
Mm-hmm.
between 5 and 6 weeks. I was like about to move into week 7.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, like cycle still hadn't come, right? And so
Mm.
it was like a very like heavy cycle seemingly,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
just excess cramping and whatnot. And yeah, I just like allowed it to pass. I had a sister who had an early release, and she had done the same thing. And so I just
Mm-hmm.
like I had sat with her alongside that journey. And so it was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of this initiation into feeling confident in my body to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, have this process and allow it to be what it was meant to be. Um,
Right.
and again, kind of having this like fear of the medical system, like I'm
Yeah.
not going to, have somebody
Mm-hmm.
do this X, Y, and Z to me when I just
Mm-hmm.
allow it to pass.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the um, coming into, uh, after my son's 3 and my partner and I like kind of started talking subtly about welcoming another baby. And just all of these things began to align in our lives. And just like different opportunities and different like forms of abundance, and our relationships with people started to feel like we were like cultivating deeper relationships within our community relations. So like parents who have children, our children becoming friends, and
Mm-hmm.
just having this like sphere of connection within our community. um, it felt like we were, kind of at a different phase within each other. We had gone through some rough patches between like when my son was between like a year and 3 years, just with like these new dynamics and
Mm-hmm.
exploration of self, and just everything was shifting. And so when, after he was 3, it was like we were coming back home to each other. We were creating a new dynamic with each other.
Yes.
And I very much felt that this spirit that was, walking alongside me in life was like really initiating this forward and calling us into deeper connection with one another, and asking us to choose one another. Um, and it was like we I think at the beginning I was saying we have like very individual lives and like relationships outside of each other with our friends, and we like have different passions and activities that we do. But I was really feeling this call for us to like start coming together on a lot more things,
Okay.
and for us to like deepen our relationship in that way. And yeah, just building more trust, loyalty, a foundation with each other, that was, based on aspects of like, what is it to build a home?
Mm.
We're not like new to this parenting thing anymore. We've been in this dynamic for a few years now, and it's like, okay, like, are we going to stay in the same kind of wash cycle patterns of things, or are we going to like actually like initiate change and act with, determination and devotion to the lifestyle we want to create with each other, for our children, for the
Right.
legacy we want to build.
Mm.
Yeah, and this word legacy like just continued coming forward. And yeah, it was a really beautiful time in our life where things were flourishing and felt full and nourished and like very welcome for a baby to
Mm-hmm.
come.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful that we like waited and, consciously conceived this child. Like we, I'd been focusing on my health, my nourishment, and um, again, the relationships in our life, which was really important. Like,
Yeah.
we wanted to have village, we wanted to have support systems in place. And again, I had been sitting in like a village prenatal monthly, and prior to conceiving, and it was just like every month feeling that this spirit was coming closer and closer, and been talking about when I would free birth my next baby. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when she when she decided to arrive, it was in October. It was about like October 10th, 11th. And so many just powerful things happened. I had gone, so the a few weeks prior, my last moon cycle was in September,
Okay.
and the it was the nearing the end of bow deer hunting season here in
Okay.
Washington on
Yeah.
the west side.
Yeah.
And I had this like full on initiation as a huntress, and was like,
Mm-hmm.
I am going to get myself a deer this year. And it was like literally 2 days before the season ended.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been going out, and my partner was like trying to like tell me like how to do it and what to do and where to set up and like all this stuff. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it my own way. I'm going to listen to you. Like if I'm going to do this, I got to do it right. I got to do it like with my
Mm.
own internal guidance,
Yeah.
and, listen and pray. Like that was really huge. It was like I was deepening in prayer and devotion, and just yeah, like really listening. And I woke up one morning and decided to leave and go down to where we were hunting.
Mm.
And I arrive, and there's these two deer that
Mm.
are just standing there, like
Mm-hmm.
right in the field, waiting for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that I had um, initially like felt drawn towards, it began walking away. And the other one was like a slightly smaller in its stature.
Mm.
And I just remember like the night before I had an experience with these deer, and was like, creator, like if it's meant to be, please guide me and please open the window.
Mhm.
Let it be known that I'm able to, harvest this deer for our family.
Yeah.
Give me a clear sign. And so that as that deer stood there, it just like stood in like perfect position and like
Mm.
opened this window, and it was standing there for like 5 minutes, just like staring at me. And
Mhm.
seemingly time just slowed down. And I like asked again, I said, is it okay to harvest this deer? And I just felt a clear yes in my body.
Mm.
And so I took the shot, and felt this just like rush through my body and being, and gave thanks and
Mhm.
prayed. And as I like, watched where it like started to run off to, um, I like came around the field, and I saw that there was a young fawn, not like so young where like it was like a baby,
Yeah.
but it was like kind of coming into its juvenile stage.
Mhm.
Um, and this fawn was standing there. And then I look over to my right, and I see the deer laying there, and I'm witnessing it take its last breaths.
Okay.
And I began sobbing because I realized that the deer was a mother.
Mm.
And it just, it broke my heart open in these profound ways. And
Mhm.
um, as I like walked up to the deer and like witnessed it take its last breath, I just like prayed to Creator to like return the spirit, back home, and giving my honor and thanks for the opportunity to harvest and to provide sustenance for my family.
Mhm.
And as I walked closer, I saw that its like milk sac was like full of milk. And I like squeezed its nipples, and milk began dripping out. And I just like sobbed and sobbed over this
Oh.
deer, and
Yeah.
placed tobacco over it, and, had this moment of like initiation.
Mhm.
And, I would never just like want to shoot a mother deer. That was like, never
Yeah.
on my radar. But
Mhm.
after realizing that this was my next step into becoming another mother, and or another form of mother within myself, and
Mhm.
the juvenile deer represented my son stepping into the next phase of independence within himself. And
Mm.
so as I like, brought forward, or I felt these messages come forward about like I would be becoming a mother again. um,
Mhm.
it was just a powerful initiation. And then a few weeks later, I had cultivated a drum with a sister of mine. And we made drums. We began working with the deer hide, and
Mm.
really just like learning this kind of next step of deepening relation with the animal and utilizing its parts.
Yeah.
When we harvest our animals, we do all the butchering process ourselves. My partner is like very well
Mhm.
knowledge in that department, and like
Mm.
can break it all down so quickly. So this was a learning process for me, having it be
Yeah.
my first year, um,
Mhm.
in learning just the actual like you know formation of the body, and like really really getting my hands in there, and our
Yeah.
son being a part of it as well. And then a couple weeks later, we conceived our daughter, and I immediately knew I was having a girl. I
Mhm.
just was like, I'm pregnant right
Yeah.
away. I just knew.
Yeah.
um, didn't even have to wait for my cycle to come or not come.
Yeah.
Just knew that I was pregnant. And then
Wow.
a few weeks later, as a family, we had harvested our first elk together
Okay.
as a
Yeah.
family. And that was a really, really significant part of the journey, because I felt that this baby was bringing forward these new forms of abundance for us.
Yeah.
And we had, my partner was going through his own initiations with being a provider and like sustaining life for a family, to expand, and like, and as we like, yeah, welcome this new baby into our you getting bit up by
Yeah.
bugs. um, as we welcomed this baby forward, then came these messages of like how to continue providing for our family and
Hmm.
um, how to like how to really, really just it all comes back to being in right relation with the
Yeah.
earth and with our way of life, our value system, our morals, what we're
Hmm.
instilling in our children, the messages that we're, receiving from them to raise them, and the lifestyle that they're wanting to live in this life. And
Hmm.
yeah, just completely like encoding our DNA with, just this ancestral wisdom that was coming
Yeah,
forward. Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and I love that story. Um, like the messages that you got when you went out to be this huntress and to provide, go out and provide and get this food for your family. And then, yes, there is the sadness that you did take the life of this mother deer and this baby juvenile deer was left. But hearing the messages that you got of like, this is you stepping into a new phase of life, and like this is seeing the visual um like tangible aspect excuse me, of this big massive change that you were going to go through in such a short amount of time is really beautiful, and like that you're able to read these messages through the physical acts of what you were doing. And as you turned it into ceremony, you prayed to creator and asked like, is this where I'm meant to go? Or can you open the window so that I can do what I need to do? And, just following that path, which led you to then, yeah, moving into this next phase of motherhood. It's all so beautiful. Like you keep saying, it's in right relationship. You weren't just doing that to, kill this mother deer and then just take a little bit of what you wanted and then leave it. You then turned the hide into a drum. You and your partner then took all of the meat and used this and, saved this for later to eat, and whatever else that you did with the pieces of this animal. Like you really put that love and ceremony and reverence into it. And yeah, I just like was seeing this story as you were speaking to it in my mind, and just seeing how like, wow, that was just so beautiful, and such a deep kind of like prayer onto yourself and to the earth and to the animals of what you were about to do. And I feel like, yeah, that is exactly what our ancestors would have been doing and would and did do. You're really taking back the information of your ancestors and really instilling that within you. And yeah, it's just a beautiful story into how this baby then came to be within your womb.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Just like having the opportunity to like nourish this baby with,
Mm.
food from the land and like,
Mm-hmm.
know where it's coming from, know that we were the only hands to tend to it and like
Mm-hmm.
process the entire thing, and that our son was a part of that. Like,
Yeah.
it felt like such a deep instillment of like, this is our life and this is who
Yeah.
we are and this is how
Mm-hmm.
we're raising our babies, and they are
Yeah.
like so worthy of this. We want them to feel that like the love that is poured
Mm-hmm.
into providing for them. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so just like every aspect of her conception was just like abundance in new forms, and
Yeah.
realizing like it, just yeah, the ways that it came forward were just
Mm-hmm.
profound.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I love that. I really do.
Yeah, and it was interesting. My pregnancy was quite different than my first pregnancy. It was a lot more intense on my body.
Okay.
I was feeling quite, yeah, just like throwing up quite a bit, really nauseous. I
Mm.
hadn't really experienced that with my son except for like a couple weeks. And I just like kept feeling like just like this, I felt like my son was high vibrational. And then I was like, this baby's like, oh, I'm holding on to some density or something.
Yeah.
Um, and just yeah, what was pouring through me, and like it just felt like I was in a deep death portal.
Okay.
Which, really relates to this hunting journey, just feeling this like initiation with life and death and being at the hand of death, and like,
Mm.
yeah, just going through this whole rewiring within my being. as I
Mm-hmm.
welcomed this baby spirit. And um, yeah, just kind of asked to be cleansed from the inside out. And that's exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I was exactly, yeah, I was going to like a village prenatal each month and, encircled by my closest sisters. I was really feeling very internal. I
Okay.
wasn't spending much time with people outside of my close couple sisters. It was very intimate within my relationships. I was feeling really drawn to like just being home, which was a big difference for me. I had always been a very like, I want to go here, I want to go on a hike, I want to go to the river and do stuff. But this was like, I need to be home and in my
Mm-hmm.
nest and
Mm-hmm.
feeling very like secure in that. And I felt that that was like death to the maiden. It was like you
Okay.
are coming into the next phase of mother and like deepening who you are as a mother. And that
Mm.
means, letting go of these old tendencies that you've had and like being a homemaker, being,
Mm.
coming home to the hearth and like really nourishing it from the inside out. It
Yeah.
was no longer like going outside to nourish in, it was coming inside to nourish out. And
Yeah.
so I felt this like total shift and reciprocation of like what it meant to be home and to be mother and to like, yeah, really just be alongside my child and
Mm.
focus on, all these things for nourishment. And within that, like I never had like fears come forward about birthing my baby.
Okay.
Despite like how uncomfortable I was, it was like, I
Mm-hmm.
know that I can have this baby. I trusted in myself. I had this innate, deep responsibility to my child to
Mm-hmm.
birth in this way and to trust my body and to complete a wild pregnancy. And um, yeah, it was just, there was no doubt in my mind. Like anytime I would like think about a fear, it was like going to the hospital. That's the only fear I have. Like
Yeah.
sabotage.
Yeah.
Like, you know, um, so that was huge. And like there was a huge difference in like my partner's comfortability with that as well. Like he
Okay.
had full confidence in me. He trusted my ability as a woman and was like, whatever you want to do. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
wherever you feel comfortable in, whatever you want me to do, however you want me to show up. And it was just like this newfound trust within us where it was like, we got this. Like,
Okay.
don't need anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a really big propeller of like again deepening relation with him as well as
Yeah.
my sense of safety and counting on him to be a leader for our family so that I could like kind of step back into like a more just like motherly role. I had
Yeah.
always been kind of in this like alpha type role within our relationship because I was like
Mm.
such a strong leader and warrior and independent and doing all this stuff, but it was
Yeah.
like I don't want to do that anymore. I want to
Mm-hmm.
just like tend to our home and
Yeah.
you know
Mm-hmm.
tend to our children and like trust that you got this.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so there was just a total rewiring within that. And yeah, so I guess I'll move into like my birth story.
Mm.
Yeah, it was um so May 16th.
Mm-hmm.
um my partner, he's had two previous heart surgeries. He's
Okay.
had his aortic valve replaced, and so
Oh,
he's had
wow.
open heart surgery. And he's also had where they go up the groin and are able to go into his heart and like replace the
Oh,
valve that way.
yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So he's got like an artificial valve in there.
Mm-hmm.
And on May 16th, he called me and was like, I think you need to come home.
Mm.
And I arrived at the house and I saw him sitting on the front porch,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, just not like almost lifeless looking.
Okay.
Um, his eyes were different directions. And I was like, something is not right here.
Mm.
I brought him inside and it's like, I don't think this is something that we can like figure out at home. Like, I think that we need to go to the hospital. I called my mom for a second opinion and she was like, yeah, you should probably take him to the hospital now.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God we did because he ended up having a stroke. And there
Whoa.
was two blood clots going into his brain. Um, and the entire process was absolutely like just traumatic as it gets. Like it was
Yeah.
just like everything happened so fast. Within
Mm.
4 hours of this initial stroke happening, he was in and out of surgery to remove these blood clots from his brain. Um,
Wow.
and so here I am, like 34 weeks pregnant, just at the precipice of like coming into my birth portal, and my partner
Mm.
is in a complete death portal. And like,
Wow.
and just like moving through this like initiation once more with how like profound life and death are simultaneously woven together,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing, like it's an absolute testimony, his story of what occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from being able to call me to
Mm.
the, doctors being able to remove the clot, him
Yeah.
coming out of surgery with like zero repercussions from the clots,
Wow.
and the stroke, and like him like just being completely like saved by the grace of God afterwards. Like I
Mm.
just like,
Yeah, my goodness.
yeah, it was an absolute just like, although it was like a huge like wrenching experience, the
Mm-hmm.
amount of just praise and thankfulness and prayer that I was able to sit in through that entire experience. I
Mm.
felt our baby like guiding us from the other side. I felt
Okay.
that every single hand that touched him was like holding protection over him and us.
Mm-hmm.
And like
Mm-hmm.
it was just, I give so much praise because I'm just like, my partner was literally a miracle case. Like he's 30
Mm.
years old and had a stroke, and like, what?
Yeah.
And so I
Wow.
had this whole initiation with like, am I going to lose my partner? Is this the last time that, I get to see him, or that my son has his father? Is my baby going to know their father?
Mm.
And I'm just so thankful for how everything occurred, and that he's, alive and well and healthy and
Yeah.
strong, and on the other side of this, the other side of
Mm-hmm.
death after this experience. And
Yeah, no kidding.
so a few weeks later, it was 37 weeks. So as soon as we left the hospital, the day we were leaving the hospital, which was in 48 hours after the stroke, I
Mm.
started having contractions. And I was
Okay.
like, oh, okay. All right. And I had been feeling baby pretty low for quite some time, but this was like, okay, like baby's
Mm.
really low. Like my
Mm.
cervix, I feel like I'm already starting to open. Like
Okay.
I just every day around the same times, it would like kind of kick on in the later in the day. And I'd be like needing to like lay down and rest. But then I was
Mm.
also like, am I getting closer? So around 37 weeks, I feel like I like really like came into the birth portal. I was like, they've been becoming more consistent. They never really like gained in intensity,
Mm.
but yeah, the contractions just like kind of just kept coming every day. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a couple like four different times that I thought I was in labor. I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
I'd wake up, it'd be like 10, 11 p.m. I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, like I think it's on. And
Yeah.
then I try to go back to sleep at like 1 a.m. and I'd be like, wake up in the morning, like, okay, it didn't happen. um, and so that was like, it was like I was dancing in the realms for quite some time. I was just like so like out of it, and just like communicating with my baby and trusting in my body in the process. And um the day I turned 38 weeks, which is the exact same thing that happened with my first,
Yeah.
I went into labor.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I'll never know if I'll carry my babies further along, but apparently they like 38 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I had um, the evening of the 15th of June,
Mm-hmm.
I had kind of stayed up late and was getting like my final nesting things done and watching a little show. And
Mm.
my partner and son were sleeping. And I decided to go to bed around like 11 p.m. And then it was at like 2 to 3 a.m. I felt an intense contraction come on, and I was like, that was different. Every other one I had was like up higher, and
Mm,
this one was like in my yoni and like down
mm,
lower.
okay.
And I was like, okay, like this is something different. Baby's like really, really low now.
Yeah.
And um, my partner was going to be going fishing that morning, and I like rolled over to him and I was like, hey, babe, I don't think you're going fishing today. And so that was like coming into the 16th, and that was Father's Day
Oh yeah.
here. And um, yeah, so he was like, okay, like I was like, you can go to sleep. Like, I think I've got some time. And I decided to get up and go in the shower. I just like turned on my birth playlist and lit a candle, took a shower. And then my mom, I called her, and she was gonna be like my kind of birth support person.
Mm.
And just like, yeah. But I knew that I wanted to labor alone. That was like one thing I called in, was like, I know I want to be alone for the majority of this. I
Yeah.
want, I had 11 people before. I want
Mm-hmm.
just myself this time.
Yeah.
Um, and so my mom was going to be there for mostly support for my son. And then, just wanting to like have my partner be there, but I knew he needed kind of some tasks to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my mom arrived around like 4:30 a.m. and I had I got out of the shower and was like kind of walking around the house, talking to her, just like kind of start leaning over things. And I was like, they're like kind of starting to gain intensity. Like nothing was ever like, whoa, like it's really happening right now. But it was like, these are gaining intensity.
Mm-hmm.
My partner started setting up the birth pool, and he went to, um, he like connected the hose to our washer and dryer, which is in the hallway. And
Yeah.
then as he turned on the water, it like must have sent like an air bubble or something into the water tank, and a bunch of like sediment from in the water tank ended up like rushing through the hose and filling the
Oh.
tub with all this like brown dirty water. And I'm just like, I'm like in labor, like if it doesn't work out, it's okay, it's all right, but get the tub. Like, and so he was just like, okay, like he spent all
Mm.
this time setting it up and like getting it ready, and
Aw.
then was just like, okay, we're not using the tub today. Which was kind of like a blessing, because I always was like, I want my baby born into tap water. Like, I've had this like vision and dream of like birthing my baby outside. Like, I like literally, like, that was like what I really, really wanted. And I'm like,
Mm.
June, we're going to be able to like birth outside. I'll have my pool set up outside and get
Yeah.
my redemptive outdoor birth. And it ended up being pouring down rain for like the whole week before I had her. I
Oh
was just like,
no.
okay, no, we're gonna be inside. Um, and so like the surrender, like,
Yeah.
surrender just kind of was the theme, right?
Yeah.
And um I it was around 5 a.m. and I decided to get back into, or I was in the bathtub, and um they so I was in the bathtub before he tried to fill up the birth tub. And
Mm-hmm.
then as my wave started like becoming more intense, and I was like becoming really vocal at this point. Just like I remember being in the tub and being like, open, 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 open,
Mm.
open, like open to your baby.
Yeah.
And just like as they would ride through, like I was able to breathe through them. And I just like I remember feeling like my face relax, my body relax, and then as the wave would come up, I'm just like open, 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 and like
Mm.
becoming very vocal with my moans. And um then the tub got like really uncomfortable, and I like remember at one point like my mom walked in, and like it was as though anytime she would walk in or my
Mm.
partner would walk in, it
Mm.
became more intense for me. Being alone was like, I was just like able to melt into myself.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was like a significant thing that I could like feel between like the difference of having
Mm.
someone in my space.
Yeah.
Um, and so I got out of the tub and decided to go into my bed after we decided the birth tub was not going to be a thing. Um, and from like 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., I literally just like went into my bed and moved between like a child's pose position, like over a couple pillows. I'm like leaned over some pillows, and then I would like go up onto my knees, and then I would like go back over the pillows. But I was like sleeping in between the waves. I like
Yeah.
went into this like deep meditative trance and was just like full on in
Mm-hmm.
labor transition. I remember I threw up one time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and oh, I forgot this. Um, before I went into the bedroom, I was pooping so much. I
Mm.
like was just like, oh my gosh, like releasing like crazy. I never pooped so much in my entire life. I was just like, okay, well, I just gotta release, release, release. And I remember like standing up after using the bathroom, and I just projectile vomited watermelon all over the bathroom. Oh, and I like looked at my partner and I was like, sorry. And then just like went to the bedroom. I'm like, you got this. He's just like wiping my poop from all over the walls and the toilet. It was just like, all right. He's like, I got you, baby. I gave him a job to do. So that
Yeah.
was good. Um, and so I'm like in my room and like moving back and forth and like sleeping, literally sleeping. And I wasn't making a
Mm,
single noise when I was in my room. My
mm,
mom like came in to check on me and she was like, do you feel like they're slowing down? Like, I haven't really heard you in here. And I was like,
mm,
nope, still in it. And then like
mm.
she brought me a cold rag and I just like, would go between those positions. And I remember I like rolled onto my back and like put my leg up on the wall. And I would
Mm.
just like move between these three positions and
Yeah.
like just like total trance. And then all of a sudden I like got the urge to poop again.
Mm.
And thankfully there was like something on the bed and I just let her go right there.
Yeah.
And then I decided to get up. I was like, I need to stand up now. And so I got up over the edge of my bed, and which is pretty tall on the frame. And then
Yeah.
I had the two pillows on the edge, and I was like kind of doing the leaning over. And then I would like squat down into kind of like a goddess pose and like have my legs like wide open and like
Mm-hmm.
you know bearing down. And yeah, so from like 8 to 8:15 about, I was like in this pose, like leaned over the bed in the and bearing down, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden I felt my water break and I was just
Okay.
like gushed all over the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Um and oh, and that was something I actually forgot in my first birth was my water hadn't broke the entire time I was in labor. And I
Okay.
remember at like 7 a.m. or so, the midwife had asked me repetitively if I wanted my water broke.
Okay.
Um, and so I'm like, no, no, no. And she just like kept asking me. She's like, it'll make it better. Like, it'll make
Mm.
it progress faster. You seem to be really tired. And so she had like kept asking me. And I'm like, finally, after saying no multiple times, I'm like, I don't know. Sure.
Mm.
Okay. Like, you get to like a point where you're like,
You get
anything to
worn
make this
down.
stop. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So another redemptive thing was that I wanted to know when my water would break on its own.
Right, right.
Um, and so when that moment that it just like gushed everywhere and it was so relieving. And
Mm.
like my mom was like, oh, like there's your mucus plug. Cause she had like walked in
Yeah.
and she was like, your mucus plug's coming out. I bared down, my water broke. And
Yeah.
she was called out to my partner and she was like, Jade, like you should get in here.
Mm.
And she was like, do you want to be on the bed or standing or do you want to go to the bathtub? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm gonna be in the bathtub. And so I like walked to the bathroom
Mm-hmm.
and we turned on the water and there was still sediments in the water. So I could
Okay.
not get in the bathtub.
Aw.
And literally in that moment, so within like 5 minutes of my water breaking, I saw the tub. I was like, this baby's coming right now. And
Mm.
I was standing there in the bathroom, one hand on the wall, one hand on the door, put my leg up on the bathtub, and like my baby just started coming out, like full on.
No
And
way.
yes, it happened so fast. Literally from 2 hours of like moaning to 2 hours
Mm.
of sleeping to boom, my water breaks and my baby is coming.
Wow.
And it was so like, I wouldn't say orgasmic, but ecstatic. Like I literally
Mm.
was just like, oh, this baby's coming. And like
Mm.
I got so vocal, so loud. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh, like literally roaring my baby out.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have to like I bared down like 2 times, but
Mm.
like just fetal ejection was just like my
Yeah.
baby was coming out so fast. The
Yeah.
head just like emerged. I remember asking my mom, I'm like, grab the camera, like get this on video
Yeah.
amidst labor. I'm like, get the video. And so she does. And the video is literally 2 minutes and 40 seconds long. And it took my baby that long to just like emerge
Wow.
completely.
Yeah.
Her head came out and, kind of did the moment there. And I'm so glad that in that moment her head came out. And I'm
Mm.
like, owie, owie, this burns. And I just remembered to breathe instead
Mm.
of like going with this like
Oh yeah.
sensation to push.
Yeah.
I was just ooh, 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 and I like breathed this like deep breath, and then shoulders was like so
Mm.
intense and just like ecstatic, and I'm like roaring and like oh, and her shoulders come out, and then she just like ejects out into my partner's hands over the bathroom floor. Thank God
Wow.
he's used to catching slippery fish because he like the way he oh my, we're so happy she didn't hit the floor because I'm like standing in the
Yeah.
bathroom. Like it was just like he got like christened by her fluids. Literally her waters just like sprayed all over him. And he's like trying to see like one eye open, like, and yeah, he caught his baby and
Oh, I love that.
like oh it was so powerful and my son was
Hmm.
awake. He was standing in the hallway with my mom right beside her
Oh,
watching, commentating in the background, and
oh, I love that.
it was so precious. And I just
Yeah.
remember him handing her to me, and she made some gurgles and I just
Hmm.
was like in just full ecstasy, like oh I caught my baby, I
Yeah.
had my baby. And yeah, just like hysterical. I couldn't even like cry. I was just like in shock at how fast she came
Hmm.
out. And
Hmm.
yeah, and we just kind of immediately moved into the bed in the bedroom and snuggled up as a family. And
Mm.
she wanted to latch on immediately.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it was just like so just oh, I remember looking at him, just this like look of relief, like we did this, like you
Mm.
caught your baby, like oh like
Yeah.
what? You did that? I did this, like look at us together and our son here present for this. And yeah, about 10-15 minutes later, I felt the urge of my placenta being released.
Hmm.
And yeah, I like had some contractions come through, which
Hmm.
were a lot more like intense than the first time. Um,
Yeah.
it was just a lot more like, oh, ouch, that's not fun.
Hmm.
And yeah, when my placenta came out, it didn't like come out all the way. It like seemingly there was like something still like holding it inside. Like the whole placenta came out,
Yeah.
but then like part of her sac was like stuck inside of
Oh,
me.
yeah. Hmm.
And so that was really interesting. And so I kind of just like sat there and waited for a bit.
Yeah.
And then, but I had like been sitting kind of on my back and leaned back. And so I was like, maybe I need to get on all fours.
Yeah.
Um, and so I did after like 15 minutes or so, got on
Hmm.
all fours and, tried to like bear down a bit and like was like pulling on this sack that was still inside.
Yeah.
And then it like kind of felt like it was like ripping. And so I was like, I better not pull too much, but then it ended up releasing. Um, and then, yeah, we did a lotus birth and had all the herbs and salts
Mm.
and kept her connected. And yeah, it was actually really interesting to like after my milk came in,
Hmm.
day 3,
Yeah.
um, I started feeling like I was getting like like hot flashes in my body, and like
Okay. Yeah.
the bottoms of my feet started to get like kind of red and itchy. And
Okay.
I was like, this is interesting. Like, this is
Yeah.
kind of a sign that like something's going on in my body.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have some kind of like infection or something. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I did some like processing with her placenta and like
Mm.
changed out the salts and the herbs. They were getting quite like saturated with the blood.
Yeah.
And after I'd done that and had this kind of like time of integration outside for the
Mm-hmm.
first time,
Mm.
um, I'd gone to the bathroom and like another part of her sac release days later.
Yeah.
And then again, a week like after the 7 days.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so again, I had this like, oh, and like my like blood was like becoming really foul smelling. It was like, just showing these signs that there was something
Mm-hmm.
going on.
Right.
I never heard of this happening. I've heard of like retained placenta, but like I was like, her placenta was fully intact. It was
Yeah.
just this like sac that was still there. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so that was like a really like another initiation of trusting my body and
Mm-hmm.
my
Yeah.
baby and my innate ability to birth, and also just kind of the process of death and releasing, and like, having
Mm-hmm.
this like, not succumbing into fear, but just like full on
Mm-hmm.
surrender and allowing my
Yeah.
body to do what it was made to do, to take care of me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was really interesting. I'd never heard of that before.
Okay.
And yeah, so a little baby girl was born, and
Oh, I
we're
love
just
that.
soaking it all up. And postpartum
Yeah.
has been completely nourishing, and
Mm.
like I've taken the time to rest. I take
Mm-hmm.
naps, and
Yeah.
I've had good freezer stash of food and fresh food, and friends and sisters and family bring food, and
Nice.
um yeah, just really again cultivating this ability to receive
Yeah.
and to take care of myself and my baby as we integrate this journey together. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, it's been really nourishing and powerful.
I love that. I love hearing that. And how was your breastfeeding journey with this baby?
Yeah, it's been abundant. Like
Mm,
my milk is flowing.
mm-hmm.
When it had first come in on that day 3, I was like feeling this kind of like feverish symptom. I was almost like, is this mastitis? Like, I don't
Mm,
know. Obviously my body was processing something different, but
yeah.
I had a sister um whose free birth come over, and she just like helped me kind of do some quantum work within, like, she was like, what's on your heart? Like, talk to
Mm,
me, what's on your heart? Like, the midwives say, like, when the tears flow, the milk will flow. And like,
yeah.
so it's just
Yeah.
like allowing myself to speak what was on my heart, and her holding that space for me, and like holding my
Mm,
feet, rubbing my legs, and like just like letting the tears flow. And it's just like
yeah.
since then my milk has just been like pouring out. And
Yeah.
yeah, just like embracing the abundance of being able to nourish my baby. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a really beautiful relationship with that. And just, yeah, it feels so good to be able to nourish her fully. And
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, it's really healing. Everything
Oh,
about her birth and the placenta and the breastfeeding has been like full on redemption for me
yeah.
in so many ways. And I just, yeah, I'm so grateful
Mm-hmm.
for that opportunity, and that this is, completely encoded within our DNA now for many generations to come. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's so beautiful. I love that your mom got to witness that and your son got to witness that as well and can feel that vibration. And yeah, it just sounds so magical and so just easeful, and so happy to hear that your partner got to catch this baby. And yeah, it really is a redemptive story and a story of you really standing in your power as a woman and as a mother. You were saying, releasing that maiden and really stepping into that way of being a mother and tending to the hearth and tending to the children. And yeah, it's just really beautiful to hear you say that. And like, yeah, hear that that is like fully being embodied with you, or through you, pardon, um, as you've as you've had this second baby and birthed her in this beautiful way. And oh yeah, these stories are just so lovely. It just warms my
Mhm.
heart hearing this whole experience that you had, and that your postpartum journey was nourishing and is nourishing because you're still so fresh postpartum. Like you're
Yeah.
only 1 month. So yeah, it's just really, really beautiful to hear this whole story of you stepping into that power and claiming that back for yourself and for your daughter now, because like you said, it's encoded within her. So, oh, it just fills my heart with so much joy.
Yeah. Oh.
Hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you were so eager to share, and that I could hold this space for you to hear these stories of yours, and just to see you flourishing, because you do. You look so vibrant, and you look you look nourished, and you look so well, and it's so beautiful to see. This is how you can be and how you can look in the early stages of motherhood. If you're
Yeah.
being well taken care of, if you've had that birth in your power, if you were able to stand, strong in what you wanted, and have that be held by the people around you, then yeah, anything is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Wow. Oh, it's just so beautiful. Is
I
there
know. It's just so like fresh and like
Yeah,
yeah, I feel it's like very full circle to share today as it's like 1 month because it's just
yeah.
like, I just feel
Hmm.
just yeah, I feel like it's just again the ability to like rewire and recode our DNA for many
Hmm.
generations to come. Like
Hmm.
we have that ability and responsibility to our children, like
Yeah.
especially in choosing to consciously conceive them and like listen to their guidance and
Hmm.
really just like instill this level of trust within our own innate ability. Like that is what makes these ripple effects for,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
future timelines. And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. Oh, wow. Is there anything else that you would like to say or share on either of your pregnancy, birth, or postpartum journeys?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty like complete and
Mhm.
just grateful to share and yeah, to feel yeah,
Mm.
to feel the love.
Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
Share
Yeah.
the love. It's
Yeah.
like you said, this bliss bubble. Like,
Hmm.
postpartum can be as hard or and challenging or as blissful and beautiful as like
Hmm.
you like set it up to be.
Hmm.
And I'm just
Hmm.
really grateful for the women in my life who have like shown up for me in various ways. And,
Hmm.
it has been a significant change within our dynamic as a family to welcome a second child and like
Yeah.
have this near 4-year-old who we're like,
Hmm.
in whoa, it ain't for the faint-hearted, that's for sure. It's been a definite like shift in our entire household and just like learning to like let go of expectation and
Yeah.
surrender to the newness. And
Yeah.
a good sister of mine, she reminded me that it's like you're not going to be doing things the way that you've always done them with him now. It's like you're let go of all of it, like
Yeah.
just really embrace that things are shifting and welcome in this new dynamic of your family. And
Hmm.
and that just really hit home for me because I really, yeah, it was a hard first couple weeks of like, okay, like we're really doing this, and he's feeling these changes too, just as much as we are, and have
Yeah.
to accept that and love him through it, and
Yeah.
create that space for him to feel nourished just as much, by having
Totally.
playtime with other friends and um, yeah, not expecting us to do it all by ourselves. Like I'm thankful that we have the community support and that we've set it up that way, and
Yeah.
yeah, can
Hmm.
rely on our peoples to show up for us.
Hmm.
Definitely not taking that for granted. Yeah,
Yeah.
giving thanks and praise where it is due for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, yes, absolutely. That's beautiful. Um, and one last question I would love to ask you is, if any woman would like to reach out to you, how could they get in contact?
Yeah. So my Instagram is at Rhythm of a Huntress. And feel free to reach out to me on there with any questions or yeah, anything. And I also have a website, abilitytogive.com. Kind of like was on a pause from like posting on there, but I do share a bit of like some writings and poetry and yeah, just kind of sharing and cultivating space. I really am an advocate for mothers who are, you know, and have a relationship with sacred plant medicines and, really wanting to open space and communion of our relationship with the earth and really reconnecting us back to our ancestral ways through our relationship with the earth and
Mm-hmm.
ourselves as women, as mothers, and yeah, really establishing that village mindset. Um, yeah, and I'll be starting a podcast pretty soon here. I'm really excited about
Yay!
to
How
share some,
amazing.
yeah, about our hunting stories as a family and just kind of the
Mm,
legacy that we're creating and cultivating for our children. And
mm.
yeah,
Oh,
thankful.
yeah. Oh, that sounds so wonderful. And again, I just can't say this enough. I'm so grateful for you to share this story. And yeah, just very, very thankful that you took this time, um, as you are still so fresh in that postpartum bubble. So thank you so, so much, Angelica.
Mm,
It's
thank
really been
you. Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you. It's been
Mm.
an honor.
Thank you so much, women, for listening to this latest episode of the Free Birthing in Color movement. If you want to continue supporting this movement and all that comes with it, please give a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Like the videos on YouTube and share this episode with some of your friends. As reciprocity for the work that I'm doing and the content that I'm creating, it only takes 2 minutes to show your support through a 5-star rating, a small written review, and a share. If you want to give a monetary donation to help with the back end costs of keeping everything that is happening within this movement going, you can send your donations through PayPal via the link in the show notes. And again, as reciprocity for the work that I'm doing and creating, I'm so grateful when those donations come through. I have many other avenues of work that I've created, such as Portals of Wisdom, which are educational guidebooks for women to reclaim and remember their personal bodily sovereignty. I have one-to-one activation sessions and one-to-one or group mentorship opportunities, as well as an amazing course called Cyclical Woman that is a deep dive into the natural cycles of Mother Earth and connecting into your internal rhythms in relation to where Mother Earth is at any given moment. And lastly, I want to mention again the Free Birthing in Color community. It is open for enrollment, so please, if you want to create a deeper sense of connection to myself and other women navigating the same phase of life that you're in, please, please, please come and join us and let's create something truly beautiful in there. All information can be found within the show notes below, or you can go to primalwomanportal.com and you'll find everything that you need. I'll see you in the next episode.